I saw my desk wiped clean in under 6 minutes, and that was just the beginning. I started thinking about when it all began. Probably the moment Joanna walked into my office without looking me in the eye. A thin red folder in her hands, HR's signature. Her heels clicked softly against the floor like raindrops on a coffin lid. She didn't stop by my assistant's desk. She didn't need to. Then she closed the door behind her. Tom. She paused. This wasn't my decision. Of course, I said, though I didn't know exactly what she was about to hand me. I knew. Of course I knew. Getting fired 2 months before retirement isn't just humiliating. It's a statement. A cold, deliberate message. You're no longer necessary. Not even for the final stretch. I reached out and took the letter, not bothering to read it. My temples were already pounding. When I stepped out of the office, everything went silent. Coffee stopped brewing. Keyboards froze mid-tap. Some people looked away. Others tried to smile weakly. Jason, my deputy, glanced at the elevator. He knew. I walked past them all, down to the parking garage, and sat in my car without turning it on. Just stared at the building I'd entered every weekday for 38 years. I'd spent more time there than at home. I'd built things in there, taught people, took hits, protected others. Now I was erased from it. The next morning, I opened the Financial Post. Headline, New Era, New Speed, Fresh Blood at the top. A photo of Jason in my old chair. Comment, Time to move fast. Efficiency is the new loyalty. They didn't just fire me, they deleted me. The house felt loud. The ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, my footsteps on the wood floor. All too sharp. I tried to read, but my eyes wouldn't stay on the page. That evening, Claire, my wife, put a plate on the table and said gently, Maybe it's for the best. Now you can finally rest. I nodded. A lie. The mail came on the 3rd day. A letter from Jerry Lawson, one of our oldest investors. Not much written, just, heard about the changes. Call me if you feel like it. I didn't call. Instead, I sat in the dark and started thinking. When did it start? When did they begin seeing me as dead weight? I remembered that summer meeting. Jason cut me off mid-sentence in front of a major client. I remembered the dinner I wasn't invited to. I remembered one of the analysts rewriting my strategy deck and slapping his own name on it. And I said nothing. I thought it didn't matter. That outcomes were what counted. Now I sat in an empty room, and the outcome was silence. I stood across the street from the building 3 days later, not to go in, just to look. The glass windows reflected the city like nothing had changed, like I hadn't been erased from every floor. The guard at the front desk didn't recognize me, or pretended not to. I watched people I'd hired walk in with their heads down, phones in their hands, eyes glazed. No one paused to talk. Even the smokers by the loading dock, silent, staring into their own corners of hell. It wasn't grief. It was speed. A rush to move forward, to forget. I crossed the street anyway, walked past the lobby into the small cafe I used to visit every morning. The barista, Raphael, looked up, eyes widening. Mr. Hammond, he said. You okay? I'm not sure yet, I said. You? He shrugged, lowering his voice. Place feels off. People nervous. Whole new tone upstairs. You can feel it. I nodded, though I didn't fully understand. Not yet. I took my coffee to a corner seat by the window. From there, I could see Jason in the lobby, talking to someone, tall, polished, unfamiliar, the new CFO maybe. Jason smiled wide, hand on the man's shoulder like they'd been friends for years. I watched the way he leaned in, confident, fast-talking. I used to mentor that man, taught him how to listen before speaking. Now he was all teeth and speed. I remembered when it all started unraveling. 3 months ago, he stopped looping me into client calls, said I needed space to focus on legacy tasks. At the time, I took it as a kindness. a graceful easing out. Now I saw the trap, building the next empire in the shadow of mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went into the garage and pulled out an old storage box labeled Contracts, Legacy Clients. Inside, years of handwritten notes, cards, letters from CEOs, founders, people I'd sat beside during bankruptcies, expansions, lawsuits, recoveries. People who trusted me, not the company, me. I picked one at random. Patrick Sinclair, real estate magnate. We'd met during the 2009 crash. His handwritten note. If I survive this, it'll be because of your patience. I opened my laptop, typed his number into the search bar, hesitated. Why was I doing this? What did I hope to find? The next morning, I didn't call Patrick. I closed the laptop, but I printed the note and pinned it to my study wall. Just a piece of paper. But it anchored me. Claire walked in as I stood staring at it. "You're not done, are you?" she asked. "No," I said quietly. "Not yet." I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't planning anything. But something was shifting. Something small and deep, like a tide turning miles offshore, silent, invisible, until it hits land. I started walking again. Not for exercise, for surveillance. Every morning I circled the block around the building. I watched who came in late, who rushed, who lingered too long outside on their phones. It wasn't about collecting data. It was about watching a rhythm I used to control dissolve into something alien. On Thursday, I spotted Marcy, from Investor Relations, arguing with someone near the parking entrance. Her face was tight, voice low. The man she was speaking to wore an unfamiliar badge, consultant, temporary, transplant. I waited until he left, then approached her slowly. "Rough morning?" I said. She flinched when she saw me, then, to her credit, didn't look away. "They brought in some McKinley guys," she said. "They're restructuring everything." I nodded. "You okay?" She gave a half shrug. "They want speed. No friction, no history." I thanked her and walked away. But my mind stuck on her last word. History. That's what I was now. History. And they were trying to erase it. That night, I sat down and started writing names. People I'd brought into the company. People I'd fought for. Clients who still sent cards. Partners who only ever signed deals after shaking my hand. 37 names. I stared at them until my eyes burned. Then I picked one. Leonard Cho, Tech Venture Fund. His company had tied up a third of our annual portfolio last year. I called. He answered on the second ring. "Tom?" "Leonard. Sorry for the surprise." No, I've been meaning to call you. What the hell's going on over there?" That hit like a strike. "What have you heard?" I asked. He laughed dryly. "We got a performance report last week with zero context. Your name wasn't on it. And some guy named Jason sent a bulk email about alignment and velocity. It read like a threat." He paused. "Tom, are you still there?" "I'm here," I said. "I just wanted to hear it from someone outside." "You want my advice?" he said. "Get back in the room, fast." I hung up and sat in silence. The house was dark, the air too still. Later that night, I called one more person, Maria Kenner, a senior partner from our legal advisory team. We'd worked together on crisis contracts for 15 years. She picked up. "Tom? I need to know something," I said. "Is the board aware of what's happening with investor feedback?" Long pause. "Unofficially, they're nervous. Officially, they've doubled down on Jason, but the numbers aren't where they should be." "Would they take a meeting with me?" "If you came with proof," she said, "and a reason not rooted in revenge." I ended the call and looked at my list again. This wasn't about my job anymore. It wasn't about pride. It was about watching something I helped build collapse under buzzwords and speed. I wrote one sentence at the top of the page: leverage relationships before they vanish. I flew to Chicago for the first time in years, not for meetings, not officially. Leonard had offered to run into me at a private investor breakfast at the Wexler Hotel. Nothing public, nothing confrontational, just a moment to be seen. When I walked in, the noise dropped half a level. People noticed. Some nodded, some didn't. Jason was there too. I hadn't expected that. He stood near the bar, surrounded by a cluster of younger execs. Fresh haircuts, thin smiles, all holding the same tall glasses of green juice. Leonard greeted me with a quick handshake. "Glad you made it," he said. "They're pretending they don't see you." "Let's make it harder for them," I said. We walked through the crowd, speaking just loud enough for key ears to catch fragments. Long-term trust, erosion of clarity, not just about metrics. Jason caught sight of us. His jaw tightened. He raised his glass. I raised nothing. After 15 minutes, I moved to the edge of the room. I wasn't trying to dominate, just disturb the air. I could feel it, the sideways glances, the recalibrations. Then someone touched my elbow. "Tom? A minute?" It was Alan Bryce, board member. Cautious, middle-lane thinker. He led me to a corner. "Are you trying to send a message?" he asked. I am the message," I said. "I want to talk, quietly, back home, with facts." He hesitated, then nodded. Monday. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow, like walking out of a house I no longer owned. That evening, back in my hotel room, I checked the news. A leak. Small, but damaging. Key investors express uncertainty over sudden leadership shift. No names, just tremors. The next morning, I returned to the office building. Not inside, just outside. Again. Raphael brought me coffee without a word. His hands trembled. "Everything okay?" I asked. He leaned in. "2 departments let go yesterday. They found out through calendar cancellations." I said nothing. Just watched the glass doors. Then my phone buzzed. Message from Maria. "Meeting confirmed. Monday. No leaks. Come prepared." That night back home, I opened the old project files. Not strategy decks, real stories, photos, letters, recovery timelines, proof that trust built the company, not speed. Claire found me at 2 a.m., papers all around me. "You okay?" she asked. "I thought I could fix it from the outside," I said. "I was wrong." On Monday, I stood in front of the board, not at the table, across from it. Jason sat at the head. His eyes dared me to look weak. I didn't speak in anger. I didn't accuse. I simply laid out the impact. 3 investors withdrawing funds, 5 major clients slowing engagement, 2 former partners freezing renewals, all after my departure. "I'm not asking for my title back," I said. "But this company cannot afford to lose what took 40 years to earn, relational capital." I paused. "And with respect, Jason doesn't understand what that means." He laughed. "You're bitter. This is just ego, Tom." I turned to the others, then asked the numbers, and asked the people behind them. Silence. The chair of the board cleared her throat. "Thank you. We'll deliberate." I stepped out, waited in the hallway, cold sweat under my collar. After 20 minutes, Maria emerged. "They're considering a counteroffer," she said, "but Jason's blocking it hard." That night, I walked home through cold wind, every window flickering like a verdict. The next day, I received a letter from the board. They had declined my proposal, offered a short-term consultancy instead. No title, no authority. It was worse than rejection. It was erasure with a smile. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, unmoving. Claire placed her hand on mine. I didn't squeeze back. In the garden outside, the first frost of the season settled over everything. White, still, final. I didn't answer their offer. I didn't decline it either. I let it sit, like a wound that wouldn't clot. 3 days passed. Then I got a call from someone I didn't expect. Elise Marchand, an investigative reporter I'd once helped dodge a defamation lawsuit, back when the company still valued integrity over optics. "Tom," she said, "I heard whispers. Something about portfolio instability and sudden exits. You still plugged in?" "Not officially," I said. "Off the record?" I paused. Then, "What do you want to know?" "Are they cooking short-term wins while the foundation cracks?" I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. She laughed. "That's what I thought." That call shifted something. This wasn't about pride anymore. It wasn't about a chair or a desk. It was about truth. Systems. The kind of quiet rot that takes down giants, not with scandal, but with erosion. I started collecting again. Not old contracts, patterns, emails from former employees, statements from clients who had been ghosted. One, in particular, stood out. A security software firm whose onboarding had been delayed 6 times under Jason's optimization strategy. I contacted their founder, a woman named Natalie Rowe. "I just want to understand," I told her. "No agenda." She sighed. "We signed with your firm because of your personal guarantee. Once you left, no one answered. I've got 7 engineers on standby. Burn rate's killing us." "Would you say you're reconsidering?" "I already have," she said. "We're pulling the deal next week." There it was. Another falling domino. That night I wrote a memo. Not for the board, for the shareholders. It wasn't dramatic, just data, comparison sheets, missing deliverables, quotes from silent voices. I sent it anonymously. 1 hour later, it was forwarded back to me from 2 separate inboxes. The system was cracking. Claire watched me work. At one point, she asked, "What's your end game?" "I don't know," I said. "But I can't watch this collapse in silence." She didn't argue, just poured coffee and left the room. The next morning, I got a call from Alan Bryce. "They're talking again," he said. "Not about the consultancy. Something different. New structure, new role. No overlap with Jason." "What role?" He hesitated. "Something they're calling Chief Relationship Officer. It would formalize what you built and protect it." "And Jason agrees?" "He's angry, but he's losing ground." I hung up without replying. Later that day, I met Maria in a quiet park. I laid out everything, the data, the responses, the fallout already beginning. "This isn't about me anymore," I said. "I know," she said. "That's why they're listening." The wind picked up. Leaves scattered across the bench between us. For the first time in weeks, I felt clarity. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even redemption. It was containment, not of a fire, of a virus. The kind that spreads when no one's brave enough to say, "This isn't right." They called it a transition meeting. I called it a test. The board had reserved a glass-walled conference room on the 19th floor, visible from half the building. Symbolism was thick in the air. When I walked in, I didn't shake hands. I nodded. Saturday, waited. Jason was already there, arms crossed, tie looser than usual, smirk tighter. Alan began. "We're considering a new structural role, separate from operations, dedicated to long-term investor and partner relations." Jason cut in. "So, a museum piece with a title?" I didn't flinch. "More like a firewall, against short-sighted collapse." The room went still. They outlined it. Chief Relationship Officer, direct reporting to the board, full autonomy over strategic partnerships, legacy clients, and long-view growth. Not a figurehead, a counterweight. I didn't accept right away. I asked for 1 week. During that time, I didn't rest. I called 5 investors, 2 institutional partners, 3 senior clients. I asked each of them a simple question. What would make you stay? Not one mentioned quarterly metrics. They spoke about trust, access, continuity. They missed the calls at odd hours, the gut checks, the feeling that someone at the top still cared. By Thursday, I had more than quotes. I had commitments. Friday night, I met Maria and a new player, Jordan Wu, a quiet, serious compliance officer recently brought in from overseas. He'd seen the internal drift, the rushed contracts, the manipulated forecasts. What you're doing, he said, isn't sentimental. It's structural reinforcement. I liked him immediately. We spent hours mapping the new architecture, not just my role, the ripple it needed to create, a new layer of accountability, a cultural reframe. Not everyone will stay, Maria warned. Then let them leave, I said. The company has to choose what it wants to be. Monday morning, I signed the contract. No ceremony, no applause. 2 days later, I walked into the office for the first time in weeks. People stared, some nodded, some avoided eye contact. I didn't care. Raphael handed me coffee without a word. This time, his hands didn't shake. My new office wasn't on the executive floor. I'd asked for something lower, near client services. Symbolic, yes, but also practical. By Thursday, Jordan and I had formed a small team: internal investigators, partner liaisons, recovery strategists. We didn't announce ourselves. We worked quietly, surgically. At week's end, Jason called for a full department meeting, tried to reclaim tempo. I watched from the side, not interfering, not nodding. Afterward, one of the junior analysts, a kid named Sean, approached me. I read your memo, he said. It felt different, like someone finally said what we all felt. I thanked him. He hesitated. Do you think it's too late to fix it? I looked around. People were talking again, real conversations, not just orders. No, I said, but we're on the clock. The company hadn't turned around, not yet. But something had shifted. The room was no longer held hostage by silence. A year later, I stood in the doorway of my old office. It now belonged to someone else, a woman I'd helped promote. She didn't see me, and that was good. Downstairs in the lobby, Raphael raised his hand. I nodded. Outside, the city moved, fast, loud, indifferent. But the glass building behind me stood still, stable. I crossed the street without looking back. Claire was waiting in the car. I got in, closed the door. We drove in silence, not away, just forward.